Andy Reid says Josh Simmons is healthy and ready to go for training camp. We have Bryce Carter from Arrowhead Addict with us today.
Let's talk about that.
You're listening to All Chiefed Up.
Before we get the show started, if you enjoy any of the content, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get this thing rolling, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you being here, Bryce. Good to have you. Charles Goldman came out with a tweet earlier today after OTAs. It said Chiefs linebacker Nick Bolton says rookie linebacker Jeffrey Bassa is a mix between Willie Gay Jr. and Leo Chenal. That got Chiefs Kingdom pretty horned up and going crazy on X. What do you feel about Jeffrey Bassa?
You know, I think with Bassa, the Leo Chenal comment's a little interesting. Nick Bolton and Leo Chenal, for that fact, are just kind of both hammers looking for nails, right? They're guys who like to play downhill, fill the run. I think like the things that I like the most about Bassa's ability were the ability to range from side to side. Overall, though, love Bassa, especially where the Chiefs got him. Like getting him that point in the draft, you got a guy who like day one, four-phase special team contributor. I see a lot more of the Willie Gay. Now, Willie Gay was a physical specimen. Boss is a little bit more subtle in size, but I do really love his ability where his athleticism is see ball, get ball, chase. You know, he eventually is going to go into that hopper and be the replacement for a Drew Tranquill. And Tranquill himself was a converted safety from Notre Dame. So there's a lot of logic there to that pick.
I think what it may be is that Leo can get after a quarterback on the edge. He can spy a little bit. I think Jeffrey Bassa can do that. Not to mention Leo Chenal can actually cover pretty well. And that's what Bassa can do. I think he can headhunt. I think he can look to be physical. I think Bassa is going to be everything and more. I also think he can contribute on special teams, which is another Leo Chenal quality. So I really do think that's where he gets that comparison. So I really do like Bassa. He's going to be a big weapon for the Chiefs and Spags. So now that we've covered what Bassa may look like on the field, how many snaps do you think he gets year one? Is he going to be productive?
Probably look a little bit like Jaden Hicks did, right? Like Jaden Hicks was brought into a situation where you had Justin Reed as the starting strong safety, played predominantly in the box. You had Brian Cook mostly at the free safety, and then we saw his snaps increase more and more as time went on. Chiefs are just kind of that unique team where they have three really established linebackers, two that they're paying real money. So my guess is like you'll probably see him on some of those situations where it's third and forever, right? Like the opposing offense is 3rd and 20, and we're just going to bring in a guy here to cover the flats for a running back or a screen pass or something like that. So the linebacker position is going to take some time, but I see him like being the logical Drew Tranquill replacement, and I think we'll see him ramp up his snaps closer and closer to the playoffs.
So I love the Jeffrey Bassa pick. I think it could be the most underrated one of the Chiefs draft. It's just kind of a guy that slips people's mind when they're talking about the draft picks, but I think he's going to be a very valuable piece. But we also drafted some other intriguing guys, Ashton Gillotte and Omar Norman-Lott. How do you feel about those guys, and do you think they contribute early with that pass rush?
Yeah, I think with Gillotte, the first thing you start with is just his ability to play a little bit bigger than his size. When I was kind of first taking a look at Gillotte, I looked at his size and thought like, this might not be a Spagnuolo type of guy. He doesn't meet 2 out of the 3 thresholds that they typically go for. But when I looked at his play, he plays much bigger than his size, particularly his ability to even rush from the 3 tech. I mean, he's given guards a hard time, and he sets a quality edge too, which is something that a lot of guys his size aren't able to say. So when I started putting those pieces together and considered that was the Chiefs pick there, it made all the sense in the world. Omar Norman-Lott, I love Omar Norman-Lott because here's the thing. Sometimes I might drink 1 beer, sometimes I might drink 24 beers, right? Like it just kind of depends on the night. Omar Norman-Lott just is so high variance. If this pick hits to be what he is, that pass rush win weight monster, you could see this being just an absolute beast of a defensive line because he has this great technique. We call it like the forklift, but like basically he takes the offensive lineman's hands and presses them above him and basically like rails them to the back and just walks guards back. Now, why was that happening? Is it because he's just this athletic freak? Is he just got so much power in his lower half? Or is it because he played 17 defensive snaps per game and was 20th in snaps played on Tennessee's defense? I'm not sure, and I think the Chiefs have to answer that question too. Almost no matter what happens this season, Omar Norman-Lott will play many more snaps than he played for the Tennessee Volunteer defense last year. I mean, for that to work, that they're really putting all their eggs in the basket of that pass rush win rate.
Yeah, we both like Ashton Gillotte. We think he could be the breakout star out of this draft class this year. He has the ability to get after the quarterback. He's pretty relentless. He's got that high motor. We also like Omar Norman-Lott. I think if it wouldn't have been for that nefarious knee injury rumor, he may have went maybe as early as the late first round or early second round. So I think that helped the Chiefs snag him at the end of the second round. Let's move it over to the offensive side of the ball. Andy said Josh Simmons is healthy and ready to go. We thought Jalen Moore was going to be the left tackle to start the season, and now it looks like it's probably Josh Simmons. How do you think that camp battle is going to go?
If you had told me on, June 19th, that there was a tackle that was taking a majority of the snaps at left tackle in mandatory minicamp and another tackle who was sitting out due to injury, I would have bet my mortgage that Jalen Moore was the guy who was practicing and Josh Simmons was resting that knee. And I would have been okay with that, because with Josh Simmons, you're buying the upside. You're buying just what was some of the best tackle tape that I've watched in quite some time. Definitively the best tackle tape I had watched in this class. But for that to be flipped, and Jalen Moore's the guy who's not practicing right now, and Josh Simmons to be the guy who's doing all the things. I mean, you have to be elated if you're a Chiefs fan, because keep in mind, you're not going to, you might find some people who were a little skeptical of his ability to start day one at left tackle, because that's just a tough task to ask of any rookie. But to have that from this level of player who had that level of tape at this point in the time of year, I think the Chiefs are elated. And I think any team, like if you could somehow put some sort of serum in general managers' minds that like, hey, Josh Simmons will be ready to practice in June and will be a full go for training camp, I think the floor for him is like 10 or 15 as a pick. So right now, it feels like it's going to be an all-out battle, whereas before it was more of like, hey, it's probably Jalen Moore's job to lose, but maybe Josh Simmons pushes him, maybe he gets healthy enough. Like right now, it feels like a true best five, may the best man win at left tackle.
Yeah, you mentioned the knee of Josh Simmons and the risk with that as far as injury concerns go. But if you look back at the draft, the Chiefs kind of played to that. It's almost like they got guys at good value because they weren't too worried about those medicals. If you look at Jalen Royals, he fell with that foot injury. And also there was some hype around Omar Norman-Lott's knee right before the draft, but the Chiefs weren't afraid of it.
Yeah, and the medical thing is something that's changed a lot with the Chiefs when Andy Reid came in. You know, he brought a big part of his medical staff over from Philadelphia. And if you guys remember back to the Eric Berry, Justin Houston, Jamal Charles days, it's something that the Chiefs struggled with. I remember just feeling like, God, like, we're still talking about Eric Berry's heel. We're still talking about Justin Houston's knee. And it felt like Jamal Charles had basically back-to-back ACL tears. And even Derek Johnson had those issues. And the Chiefs have really kind of turned that around, not just in how they rehab and recover guys, obviously thinking about Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs and the high ankle sprain and how they've been able to bring him back from it. But just think about how consistently healthy they are. It feels like every playoffs they face teams that are just like hampered extremely by injury, and the Chiefs usually have their guys there. So I do think that there is a bet there on their medical staff, but that bet has paid off quite a bit recently for them.
So another position that I think is going to make a very intriguing camp battle is going to be tight end. They have obviously Travis Kelce that's going to be the one, Noah Gray who's right in behind him, but you also have Jared Wiley who's coming back off that knee injury, and then they added to it with Robert Tonyan. They had him previously on the practice squad last season for a little while, but he's a veteran who flashed a little bit with the Green Bay Packers. And then they have the UDFA that's got everybody all horned up, Jake Brenningstool. That was a guy I actually had in my top 10 tight ends in the draft, but he went undrafted. Andy made the call because they wanted him, and apparently there were a few teams after him. How do you think that room pans out?
Look, I think Jake Brenningstool is making a lot of plays in OTAs right now. There's no doubt about that. But Brenningstool's knock in college was that he alligator armed a little bit and he shied away from contact. We've yet to put the pads on. We've yet to hit anybody. This could all come crashing down for Brenningstool. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it is a possibility. I think Robert Tonyan doesn't really block enough and doesn't really offer you enough that I would think he's going to make the team. People are saying Jared Wiley could possibly start the season on the PUP list or the IR. Andy says he's healthy, he's getting in some work. Even if you start him on the PUP list or the IR, what are you really doing? You're just kicking the can down the road for a few weeks. So I think they're probably going to take 3-4 tight ends. It's going to determine how many wide receivers and running backs they're going to take. But right now, I think if there is a dark horse to make it, it probably is Brenningstool.
The question really is is Wiley going to start on the PUP or is he going to be active? The Chiefs have historically kept 4 tight ends. I know that they like having that versatility. I think Brenningstool definitely has the inside shot to make the roster. He's made a lot of plays in OTAs, made quite a few plays that, are getting highlighted by some people who really know what they're talking about, like Matt McMullen, like your Pete Sweeney's or whatever. And I mean, he's a guy, take it this way. Andy Reid was the guy who called him for his UDFA call. So that says something, right? And I think Wiley's knee will play a part in this. To me, the biggest question with tight end is just who's going to be the blocker? Right now, they've got 3 or 4 guys who are more of your pass catching guys who can block, but you don't have that Blake Bell or, that Jason Dunn back in the old days. You don't have a guy it would be great if you've got an offensive line that's got some question marks on it. If you had a really kick-ass tight end that you could put on the left side and chip pretty often. So I wonder about maybe a veteran addition there, if there's some guy that gets cut or some guy that they like in training camp. But I definitely think Brenningstool, obviously the youth there and the profile, right? I think a lot of guys had about a 4th or a 5th round grade on him. He's not a huge after the catch threat, but pretty good at the catch point, good over the middle of the field, an adequate blocker. Honestly, him and Wiley have quite a bit of overlap as far as their profiles.
Man, I find Jake Brenningstool pretty exciting. I think he has a chance to make the roster if they think he can be an extra weapon for Patrick Mahomes in the offense. Let's move over to another position that's going to be fun to watch in camp, and that's running backs. Obviously, they got Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. Pacheco's going to be your 1, Kareem your 2. Then they went out and got free agent Elijah Mitchell from the San Francisco 49ers, and they drafted Rashee Smith, and that guy's making some waves.
Pacheco is certainly a lock. I would assume Kareem Hunt is a lock at this. And they've talked about Rashee Smith and how much they like his kick return ability. And they took him in the draft this year. I would feel like if it came down to a tie with him and Carson Steele, he would probably win that. I said something on Twitter this week that Elijah Mitchell has the widest range of outcomes from almost any player. If you told me he was cut in St. Joseph, I wouldn't be shocked. If you told me he was their leading rusher going into the playoffs, I also wouldn't be shocked. Kind of similar to what Damian Williams' trajectory was back in 2019. Or think back to Jerick McKinnon, where he had about 100 yards rushing the whole season, and they just flipped the switch in the playoffs in 2021. I think the Carson Steele thing is how good of a fullback is he? Because he didn't play that in UCLA and at Ball State. He was more of just a pure running back. The fumbles obviously were a big issue for him, and then just the lack of explosiveness. But if he can actually be your Michael Burton, your Anthony Sherman, Tony Richardson guy who actually makes an impact at the fullback, they have to keep that position. It feels like a lot of times their roster kind of teeters on 4 tight ends or a fullback. Which would they rather? Because they can use some of those guys in some of those places. My guess right now, and I think the biggest question is, Elijah Mitchell's skill set is a direct overlap with Isaiah Pacheco. A lot of people think former 49er, and they're like, oh, he's Jerick McKinnon. But in reality, he barely has any passing production. I think he's got less than 25 catches in his career with San Francisco. So the idea that he's just going to come in here and start catching passes and be a third down back, it's just not logical.
Me personally, I feel like we've been kind of missing that short passing game that Jerick McKinnon flourished in so well a couple of years ago. Rashee Smith being the ex-wide receiver, he can definitely fill that type of role. How do you feel about that? Do you think the Chiefs will get back to more of a quick, short passing game to help open things up?
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to do it, if they're going to do it, but they need to do it. They've got to get back to more of passing the ball out of the backfield, spreading it around, getting the ball out quicker, and making this offense more dynamic, because ultimately that's going to help the deep ball.
Yeah, I think with Rashee Smith, looking at his passing production, obviously a converted wide receiver from Miami, he's got good hands. I think the ability to get explosive plays from the running back position, especially in the passing games, is something that's really interesting. Yes, the Chiefs have been pretty consistent at passing the ball, but a lot of times that's been screens. Would really love to see their ability to okay, we come out 2-by-3 or something like that, or we come out 2-by-2, and then we've got Rashee Smith in the backfield, motion him out, now we're in empty or something like that. That totally changes the numbers, right? where you see teams do this to Nick Bolton. We're trying to target Nick Bolton. All of a sudden, we've got Brashard Smith matched up on Nick Bolton. Hey, we've got a matchup here that we like over the middle of the field, even if it's just mesh or something like that, where it's just running a crossing route. You like that math. So I do think that Brashard Smith, it's going to be a probably slow play, especially because the passing game, there are those times when we're on the field as in a passing situation. Oh, look here, we've got a guy who's showing pressure here, whether it's a simulated pressure or not. We need to keep him here to pass protect. Well, now you're doing the thing that most every running back agrees is the toughest thing to do as a rookie, is come in and pass protect, because you got to know your role, fill your gap, and then execute the block.
So let's move on to the wide receiver room. We think we know the top 5 guys here. They seem to be pretty much locked in stone. Jalen Royals coming in at that number 5 spot right behind Juju at 4. And then, of course, we know the top 3. Who do you think the Chiefs take at number 6? Is it Sky Moore? Is it Tyquan Thornton? Andy says he can't wait to see Tyquan Thornton in game action.
Yeah, that last wide receiver spot feels like it's kind of going to be the real battle to watch up in St. Joe. I feel like the Sky Moore path is just really kind of run its course. What he does just has some direct overlap with some other guys. Like, Sky Moore's ability to line up outside and win just has not been there. So then you're thinking slot. Well, the Chiefs have like 3 guys that really fit in well to the slot. So the path for him making the roster feels like it's a long ways. Do I think it's possible? Sure. He does have that pedigree. But boy, it just feels tough. Then you throw in like the returning spot of this too. Obviously, special teams plays a huge part. Nico Remigio really came on at the end of the season as a returner. So you feel like they've trusted him in some big moments to be a returner. Does he have that path there? And then you talked about some of the UDFAs. Like, I know Elijah Badger's gotten some hype too. I think you said it best, right? Like those first 5 guys, those guys are very much locked into there. I almost wonder with Tyquan Thornton, he's a guy that they kind of see as their MVS, where it's like, hey, we're gonna line up a sacrificial X here and have a guy who just runs, goes down, touches the goalpost, and comes back. Then you have Xavier Worthy, who can do all sorts of different things, whether it be stretching the field on the other side, whether it be some of the more gadgety stuff that he does. You've got your power slot with Rashee Rice, and you've got Hollywood Brown, who can also kind of do like some more traditional over the middle of the field, Z, intermediate things. Like, this starts making an offense that has a lot of different paths to win. And then you still got Jalen Royals in there, which my hope for Jalen Royals is that they kind of outsource some of that pure yak stuff that Rashee Rice did, like the bubble screens, the tunnel screens, mesh, things like that, to Royals. 1, to take some of that wear and tear off of him. And 2, also, hey, guess what? Like, believe it or not, Rashee Rice's contract will be coming up sooner than later. So far, he's been injured and had legal trouble and been very good when he's on the field. If you felt great about Jalen Royals' productivity and ability to replace Rashee Rice, that gives you a lot of flexibility with his contract negotiations going forward.
So yeah, we think that Sky Moore could be a potential cut candidate. Wouldn't surprise us. Also wouldn't surprise us if he's on the 53-man roster. Who are a couple names you think would be a surprise cut?
Am I crazy for saying Felix Anudike-Uzomah? Here's my thought process. I think that he's shown enough in the snaps he's played that he probably can like have a higher floor than some of the other guys. But it was about this point that they cut Breland Speaks. Now, Breland Speaks, there was a lot more questions around. He had been injured. And I think to this point, FAU has shown more productivity than Breland Speaks. But this is usually around the time that teams start trying to like wave the white flag on guys. Like, it's year 3 for him. So I feel like that would be very, very spicy, very, very bold. Maybe Joshua Williams could be another name too. Like, he's a guy, they had all sorts of issues on the corner opposite of Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson all season long. And in the playoffs, Joshua Williams did not play like almost a single snap of defense. They clearly do not trust him despite him having some pretty good athleticism and length. I think that is their deepest position on the roster. Maybe it's not a cut, but maybe it's just like, hey, like flip us your conditional 7th round pick. You kind of need some corner depth, and we have corner depth. We like what we've seen from Noah Williams. We like what we've seen from Christian Fulton. We feel good about that. So maybe that's another name that could be on the move. And you never know, we might have, another like training camp legend like Amir Smith-Marset.
Another one that could be in a little bit of trouble is Christian Roland Wallace. He made the 53-man last year, but that room's got pretty hectic, so we'll see how that all works out. Now the time's yours, Chiefs Kingdom. Get down in the comments and let us know how you feel about Josh Simmons coming back off that knee injury. Do you think he will be the Chiefs' left tackle this season? Also, what camp battles are you intrigued by? And who do you think could be some surprise cuts?
That's going to wrap it up for today. Thanks for subscribing and sharing this with a friend. We'll catch you next time. Go Chiefs.